Broadcasting under the night sky from the edge of an undisclosed jungle on the Gulf of Mexico, I'm Christopher Garetano, your voice in the night. For the next hour, allow me to be your guide into the bizarre unknown, the fantastic macabre, and together we'll journey to that borderland between fiction and reality, a place beyond all rational explanation. We are now off to the witch. Two possibilities exist. Either we are alone in the universe, or we are not, and both are equally as terrifying. That's a quote from the late Arthur C. Clarke, a futurist in his time, arguably a prophet of science and advanced technology, and the co-author of the classic tale of intergalactic exploration and extraterrestrial contact, 2001, A Space Odyssey.
It's been taken for granted by scientists for many years now that life is common throughout the universe and that probably intelligence is also common. This idea has not reached the public, which associates it purely with fiction, but this is not fiction. And it's time this was realized, just as a few hundred years ago the world had to realize this Earth was not the center of everything.
Clarke's influential novel was first developed with and co-written beginning in 1964 by the mighty filmmaker Stanley Kubrick.
Scientists know now that there are about 100 billion stars in our galaxy and about 100 billion galaxies in the visible universe. The point is that there are so many stars in the universe that the likelihood of life evolving around them, even if it were possibilities of 1 in a million, there would be hundreds of millions of worlds in the universe.
It was Kubrick, although uncredited for the novel, that first reached out to Clarke to help him develop the project, as he had yet to tackle the then underexplored genre of science fiction cinema. The book was ultimately published in 1968 after Kubrick's immortal motion picture of the same name was released in theaters around the world. At first, Kubrick's masterpiece wasn't well received and even lambasted by the stuffy film critics of the day, including Pauline Kael, and I quote, 2001 is trash masquerading as art and monumentally unimaginative. Slowly but surely, there was a growing audience with the youth culture of 1968, and soon after Kael's grossly misguided review was published, Kubrick's bold, experimental dream became a global phenomenon. 2001: A Space Odyssey was and still is ahead of its time. It's a powerful litmus test to its audience. If your consciousness is ready to expand, then the picture is more than just a movie. Hungry eyes within the radically changing zeitgeist of the late 1960s craved that very thing, and Kubrick's picture literally transmuted the audience. Voracious theatergoers would flock multiple times and in droves to 2001, hoping to take a trip, sometimes loaded with psychedelics pulsing through and illuminating their physiology to enhance every image that the genius filmmaker gifted them. It was reported that a young man at a showing of 2001, most likely deep in an ocean of LSD, walked arms spread into the movie screen, uttering only this phrase, "It is God. It is God." Space Odyssey offered audiences a look beyond our planet and into the future with a technological realism only known to astrophysicists of the day. At the time of Space Odyssey's release, we hadn't yet reached the moon. The US Apollo 11 mission didn't touch down on lunar soil until July 20th, 1969, a year after Space Odyssey made its debut. The film changed the face of science fiction cinema forever and inspired the greatest works of Ridley Scott, George Lucas, James Cameron, and Steven Spielberg. Space Odyssey did predict future technology, perhaps even informed it with much less psychotic versions of the malfunctioned killer AI computer HAL, which has now become a fixture in every modern home as Siri and Alexa. 2001 was an ingenious estimation, and with the help of Clarke's connections to NASA, Kubrick was able to execute his movie prop technology with true engineers. Another fascinating aspect, along with its technical achievements, was that 2001 first raised the question of a powerful force that may have influenced, perhaps even genetically engineered, the human race, ultimately expediting our evolution. In the opening of the film, Kubrick explores the primal savagery of early human civilization, roughly 4.2 million years ago, with immersive portrayals of prehistoric Africa. There are conflicts between what seems to be raging tribes of the ape-like Australopithecus. At the dawn of our evolution, Kubrick successfully transports us to the land before recorded culture. The extraterrestrial influence is portrayed as a giant rectangular monolith built of an unknown black alloy that suddenly appears to the ape men, a physical but mathematical presence of a far advanced godlike technology designed to influence the metamorphosis of ancient human. There was a duality to this message. In one part, Kubrick was self-aware and as a result inserted a metaphorical wink to history, boldly proclaiming that his movie is completely different, that the monolith itself is Kubrick's film, and it would certainly change and evolve the minds of the audience. The other part was a distinct suggestion that we perhaps were the result of an alien experiment. Tonight's guest is someone who truly believes that the theory originally put forward by Kubrick and Clarke is her reality. Her name is Marina Seren, and we'll hear her story after this commercial break.
In 1968, George Romero reflected back at the world with his horror classic, Night of the Living Dead. Throughout 4 decades, from the rising dawn and on throughout land, he continued to inspire our nightmares. Now, 3 years after his death, George A. Romero returns from the grave with his final masterpiece, The Living Dead, a mammoth novel and his ultimate zombie epic. From Tor Books and co-authored by Daniel Krauss comes George A. Romero's The Living Dead. Find it wherever books are sold.
2001, A Space Odyssey, is an epic drama of adventure and exploration which begins millions of years ago and ends with man confronting his destiny among the stars. It is a story that will sweep you across 500 million miles to the greatest of all the planets, mighty Jupiter. And even then, your journey will be just beginning. For across the light years, the stars are waiting and watching. 2001, A Space Odyssey reveals the strangeness, beauty, and wonder that may be waiting for us on the moon and planets in the year 2001. 2001, A Space Odyssey. A Stanley Kubrick production from MGM in Cinerama.
Welcome back to Off to the Witch. I'm your host, Christopher Garitano. Tonight's special guest is suggesting something to me that makes sense of our existence. It's certainly not to deny years of anthropological research, logical science, and genetic Darwinist theory that we evolved from apes over millions of years, but offers the same theory that Stanley Kubrick and Arthur C. Clarke implemented in 2001: A Space Odyssey, that somewhere along our evolutionary timeline, perhaps another influence stepped in with the purpose of accelerating our metamorphosis. Our guest has an extraordinary tale. Her name is Marina Seren. She's 20 and living in Madrid, Spain. She's lived there all her life, and at the very young age of 5 years old, she began to speak to her parents of esoteric theories that the human race was created by extraterrestrials, that she herself was an alien in human form. I think it's best that you learn the full story from her. So here's my interview with Marina Seren.
I was born in Madrid, in Spain, at the 8th of July of 2000, and I grew up pretty much in close to the center of Madrid. I have lived here all my life. I have never moved to another place. It's just I have traveled. Sure, I have a village. My grandmother comes from a village from the north of Spain, and I do have a house there, but I have mostly lived here in Madrid.
Was it when you were a little girl that you first had an experience that you felt you were different from everyone else?
Yes, in school I will show certain abilities like heightened intuition or higher IQ or a lot of creative abilities and intelligence. And I will show a really intense connection with the extraterrestrial topics. Mostly, I will go to my parents and I will tell them that I was an extraterrestrial that came from another planet. And when they will ask me how will that happen, I will say, well, I teleported to the womb of my mom.
It's such a unique thing to say to your parents at 5, especially not being exposed to anything beforehand. Were you always that way? Did you always express yourself?
So I will be pretty much obsessed with those topics and write stories about stellar flights to other parts of the cosmos.
And so these feelings came naturally. Do you recall images and ideas in your mind that didn't come from culture that seemed to be inherent? It's almost as if you felt this way since birth.
Yes, I felt really familiar with the idea of beings with big eyes and small mouth and mostly blue skin or green skin. I felt that was natural, and I haven't really seen it in TV or anywhere else.
Can you tell me a story of when you realized maybe that you had a heightened ability, like in school, or just bring me back there for a second? Where were you? What happened?
I was about 5 years old, and I will be super hard worker. I will learn super fast, and I will show a lot of creativity when the teacher will ask us to create something or be original or artistic. And mostly when they will ask us about ideas that we had, I will always have like really original ones, and mostly it will be centered to the topics of the universe or even science. I will show a high interest in science and the universe, the cosmos. Pretty much is that kind of intelligence that will come through.
Sure. And so you just had this unique interest and compulsion. And at what point did you start to truly consider that you were very, very different than most people around you? Like when did you really say, "Hey, there's something I have to consider here. It's not just an interest, but I might be truly, physiologically different."
Oh, that happened when I was 15 years old.
Can you bring me back there and, bring me back to that moment when it occurred to you and when these activities and these abilities started to really take its form within you?
It was 2015, and I was in school, and I was finishing school and prepared to go to high school. It was the last year, just. And so I was showing again a really strong interest in the universe and in science, and I have decided already that I wanted to be a physicist or some kind of scientist that will try to discover the truth about existence, about consciousness, about the outer space. But that interest started to take over my life in all aspects, and I became really obsessed because I wanted to answer everything. Like, I will ask myself, why do we exist? Why is that humans are more evolved than other life forms in the planet, such as animals or plants? How is that other hominids did not evolve as we did? Because this doesn't make sense to me. It doesn't seem like a smooth evolution. because evolution is about the recombination of genetics, not the creation of new genetics. So this kind of jump in evolution, in which we will have abilities to manipulate atoms and the concepts of existence that are so abstract, and really learn how to create entire civilizations and advanced technology, when we were already adapted to our medium, to our ecosystem, and we have physiological features like more teeth or more nails or more strength to hunt and to survive just as we existed, it makes me really think that there was some sort of intervention.
So take me to that for a moment. Take me to the timeline, if you will, but for the people that really don't know and haven't heard anything, let's begin at human origins, the real story. Can you tell me, starting there?
So the Earth was a planet that was really calm. There were certain animals, there were certain beings who are also advanced in their own ways. There were hominids. The reality on Earth was really positive. So it all goes back to the Orion system. There are humans on other humanoid beings who were having the same kind of experiences and realities that we are having right now when it comes to the idea of governments being in power of the people, governments being corrupted, people fighting for power, dark forces wanted to enslave races and harvest them and develop like highly advanced technology and have a lot of resources. They will fight and they will have wars for resources, for territory even. So what will happen is that because of that, they will destroy their own ecosystems. So they will not be able to persist in their planets anymore. What they did is that they tried to find out other star systems, other planets that will have the resources that it was necessary for their technology and for them to be able to heal their atmosphere. So these resources in particular is gold. The monatomic gold it has been studied, and they have found that it is really useful when it comes to healing the polluted atmosphere. So they will find Earth and they will see that there will be a lot of gold mines. And what they did at the beginning is to start mining. They will start to get, the resources, the materials, and everything. But they started to be really tired because, it was a tough job and they didn't want it to do the hard work. So what they did is that they said, let's find a slave race. And as they didn't find any slave race, because, mostly all civilizations around were evolving and independent, they will take the hominids of the earth, what we call, the caveman right now. And what they will do is that they will create a genetically engineered race parting from their own genetics and their genetics. So they will create a hybrid race between them and the hominids. But they will find out that the result of that will be beings who will have their knowledge, their abilities, and will be able to decide for themselves what is that they want to do. So they wanted that race to have their abilities, but not their knowledge, not their ability to remember who they are, what they can do, how can they create their realities. So they manipulated the DNA of that race and they deactivated certain codes that connects consciousness with their multidimensional nature, their abilities who are of higher frequency, and how to create reality. And so the souls that will incarnate into these vessels will not forget who they are, where they came from, and what they can do to become free. And parting from that point is where everything started for us and why we are here today, not remembering who we are, our past lives, our parallel lives, how can we become empowered, etc.
So just to clarify, in short, there was an alien race that came here to Earth. there was already beings that were naturally indigenous to Earth. They were mining for gold. They needed certain elements to save themselves because their planet was depleted.
Yes,
And it was an enormous task. And so they made hybrid races as slaves, which eventually became us.
exactly.
And since then, they are still using us in so many ways, psychologically, spiritually, if you will, physically. I mean, it's such an amazing thing because here is a curious question, and I've always wondered: we as people portray this in our science fiction throughout the last 100 years. We these things just come to mind, and I wonder, is it? Can you explain why collectively we have this tendency to want to tell stories like that? Because they just seem to come from osmosis. They come, I write them myself, and it's just something inherent, as if we know.
Yeah.
Why do we do that? Why do writers and sometimes I feel like they're prophets of science fiction because they always predict or influence the future. Why do you think it is that we have that in our deep, what we call imagination?
You mean this story or similar kind of stories?
These stories have been told in fiction or science fiction for many years, and we're coming to a place now where it's very unique, where people are saying on many levels this is true. Everything from, let's say, Invasion of the Body Snatchers to John Carpenter's They Live, to all of these stories that were once, as a kid that I watched, were fiction. There are so many people, including yourself, that really support this as truth, as fact. And in many ways, it should make more sense than religious tomes. May I ask, do you feel that religious tomes were a distraction? It's telling the truth of creation. It's warning people not to go and absorb knowledge. It's warning people of this and that.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, so do you feel the origins of those tomes were from these extraterrestrials?
Yes, these extraterrestrials called the Anunnaki, they they did have a history when they came here. They created, experiences and certain, there was certain story being created in their earth, how they get to, create the human race. So that story they manipulated in a way that it will be transgressed, from the actual truth. It will be kind of like fear based belief system, so that people will take, a negative effect from it. And a negative message, as you said, like not, don't absorb knowledge, don't get to be a, to wish to get knowledge, remain in ignorance, And the reason of why this story is like about, the fact that we are a hybrid species, why they are coming now, and why people are writing about it, it's because we are remembering. We're starting to remember.
You must have gone through a lot of back and forth with yourself. Like, did you automatically just accept these feelings that you had, or were you struggling with them for a little while?
I have been struggling with them for about 5 years, which is, when everything started. When I have became more stable or more in peace with it, it was just, this year and last year. So yeah, it has highly affected my mental health. I even regret it for some times, like having awakened so much of the forbidden knowledge, because I understood it as a punishment.
What is important to know about the true history of human origins that I think the audience who doesn't know, what would you tell them right now about all of this?
There was a time in history in which we accessed our limitless potential, our full potential, and we almost make it to the point of being totally free and totally liberated from, shadow energies and fear. And it was the times of Atlantis.
Tell me more about that.
Sure, there were about, there were a lot of civilizations, but the most notorious ones was Lemuria and Atlantis. I don't know much about it as much as I know of other extraterrestrial civilizations, but I know I have had lives there, and I know that we were really aware of much of the ancient knowledge, of the ancient wisdom, and the hidden, forbidden truth and everything. We knew about our parallel lives. We knew that we were not, finite, that we were infinite, in fact, and that we will always exist. We know about psychic abilities, and we know about the power of love and light. The fact that we were one, that we were one consciousness, and that unity will awake, the planetary consciousness. It will make us evolve further. So we almost reached that level. But just as the last time of that civilization, something happened, and it's that we became corrupt. We became focused in power, most focused. There was tyranny in certain parts of the civilization. So when this happened, unity was not really established. So we became separative. And so if we became separative, is when we disconnect, we deactivate our DNA, and the darker forces have a possibility to enslave us back again. And that is exactly what happened.
And so in regard to now, where are we as this kind of lost and controlled and manipulated civilization? How would you describe us now? What is our true reality?
Right now, we are at the beginning of transformation. We're in the beginning of what many people now religiously call the new age. I don't really like to use that word or that term because these last centuries, decades, has been used in a religious kind of dogmatic way. But it is really like the idea of a new era, a new times of light, of awakening, awareness, and reconnection with the whole humanity.
After these messages, we'll be right back.
You're listening to Off to the Witch from White Phosphorus Pictures, currently available on Spotify, Anchor, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and many more. It's also available on the official White Phosphorus Pictures YouTube channel at Garetano7. Subscribe today, as our forthcoming YouTube show, White Phosphorus Presents, will premiere in early 2021, along with special screenings, short films, trailers, and behind the scenes of our new movie and TV projects. Go to YouTube now and subscribe to our channel at Garetano7, that's Garetano7, and visit our website at offtothewitch.com. What's art worth if it drains your life away? If your fire to create burns so strong that it roasts the very balance of your life, then what is it all worth? I needed a film that would lift me over that wall. It came to me like a specter crashing in from another dimension. Mayhem's what will catch their attention. Mayhem's what will sell tickets. South Texas Blues, the new graphic novel about the making of the most infamous motion picture of all time, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Visit southtexasblues.com and order your copy today. Do you see this as a chance for us to heal? Because obviously the world is in some kind of crisis, and people in charge are behaving very strangely to most of us. And again, like, I think it's important that, yes, we right now we speak on this episode, that we speak to people that are privy to some of the information that we're talking about. But I think it's also very important, and this is a golden opportunity to tell the people, and we have been beautifully, anything that they need to know, that they might not know or have never heard of before. So, if you were to describe what's happened in the past year, is that connected to any revelations being suppressed? Because I've heard that a lot from a lot of people who believe that. Do you feel that what has been happening in the world in the last year or so is connected to that?
Yes, it is connected to what's happening, but as consciousness is really complex and is really big, it's really like infinite, and it has many perspectives about how to understand certain scenarios or circumstances. There has been a lot of hypotheses, like people focus on fear were telling this narrative that these the dark ones want to kill us, and they want to create a new world order, and they want this to happen. And that reality is true. They do have dark plans, and the pandemic was beneficial to them, but that does not mean that it can also be understood from a spiritual perspective, and it has also like a spiritual origin or a spiritual meaning or use. The spiritual perspective is that the virus came from nature, and it came as a response of us intervening with nature in a negative way, not being in balance with it. So that dark energy, that fear energy, came to our system, to our collective system, and it represented the idea of not being able to breathe, not being able um to just breathe oxygen and oxygenate your body, because it represented symbolically the idea of the harm that we have made to our ecosystems for years with our technology.
And for the people who have a hard time separating from because a lot of our reality is what we make of it here. And a lot of people don't understand that. They feel like this is all real, and mostly you're living in an artificially created reality to make sense of life. And what would you say to those people? Because you have a wonderful way of explaining things, and you're not scathing, and you don't condescend. And so, if those people were listening right now, how would you tell them to please look outside of their known reality most of their lives? How would you suggest they look? Where would they look? How would they look?
I will recommend them to start to question things. Like, for example, this specific statement that has been, passing through generations and generations, like, hey, we only live once, and we are born, we reproduce, we die, and that's all. And the earth and everything was created out of Big Bang, and it was all arbitrary. I will suggest them to look at it with a different kind of logic. Like, the earth, the ecosystems, biology, intelligence, the brain, all of that, it's so complex. It's such a complex structure that there's just no way that it was arbitrary. Technically, God is a holistic mind that is kind of like over everything that exists, both aliens and humans and animals, all kind of life forms. And that is because God is the sum of all of us, all consciousness, all forms of life, all objects, everything. So, in a sense, it was not exactly that aliens are God, but God is the universe, the idea of consciousness. It's the all that is. So all of the beings who exist, aliens, humans, are all part of that one. It's just that it is itself, it's God expressed in infinite perspectives of itself.
Okay, so my question is, so within that very complicated and complex clockwork of existence, which is God, right, or what people call God, there are also beings, and we were engineered within that complicated system because as we're influenced by them, they were influenced by that clockwork also, as we are too. And so whatever this mind is, this powerful mind that is of all creation is also influencing them. Is that correct?
It is, but it's mostly the idea that we are God. It's just that we have freedom on a higher level, on a higher perspective. So it is an unconditional higher intelligence that lets all consciousness and all beings in the universe create what they wish to experience. It's just that humanity has forgotten how it creates its own reality. That's the point. So that's how you start to wake up and realize, wow, okay, so if I am free, how is that I'm not really free? How is that I am, into a system, living in a system in which I am dependent and I have to work for others and I cannot be happy because, I have to do this and that, most people's feelings about it. So it's because it's consciousness that it's existing on a higher frequency. So it's a higher layer of our consciousness that our physical mind has lost connection with along these years, in the past years. So that's the whole point about the awakening right now, is the reconnection with that aspect, that higher frequency or higher aware aspect of ourselves, who is fully conscious about how it creates reality. So it's the idea of becoming empowered in that way, becoming the creators of our reality instead of, surviving, or being the victims of itself.
Do you feel that humanity will wisen up to this? Will they realize this and separate themselves from this slavery, really?
Yeah, sure. Mostly, one of the highly positive aspects of my experiences, because, there are many stories about how people get to know about this and how people started this path and how they get their own, feedback from this kind of engagement, this kind of aspects of reality. One of the positive things about my experience is that as I started when I was a teenager, my mind was a little bit more open because, I did not become truly focused into, the programming for humanity. So I was more receptive, energetically speaking, to these kind of ideas to manifest in my physical reality. So, for example, when I will be researching about the extraterrestrial beings who are positive, I will be, for instance, in my room and I will go to the terrace and I will be looking at the sky and I will say telepathically, are there any beings out there who can say hi? Kind of like joking, not really expecting anything. And at that moment, I had a really, really intense UFO sighting. Um, it was so unique to and so um, revolutionary to my experience because it was kind of like a confirmation, So it all started to go in that direction, like having little confirmations here and there, that will help me become more even convinced that this was real, that I was not, hallucinating or anything. So yeah, that was one of the most relevant experiences that I had in my path.
And do you ever feel like they are influencing you and negative?
No, they actually are. because I so have the dark side of it, the dark beings, but the positive beings have show up in my dreams many times, and they will always come up with spiritual guidance, with spiritual support. Even the first experiences that I had when it comes to meditation and the idea of astral projection, I will be having a lot of vibrational support, and I will be visited by these beings, and what I will feel is anything but love, and light. So that encouraged me to feel safe besides the negative interaction and the negative beings.
What are your determinations? Where do you want to take this, let's say in the next decade? Throughout the next decade, what do you hope for you to accomplish, and what do you hope that humanity accomplishes, at least in terms of even realizing things?
Ooh, I guess the answer will be open contact. Because one of the ways that I started when I was, receiving these questions, like these feelings that I was different, I will say, well, maybe I am connected to these beings because I'm supposed to prepare humans to the idea of contact, and I will feel strongly. I will see visions of me in the future, connecting with the gray beings, with the gray aliens, the positive ones, of course, and certain other beings. I will help them connect with humanity, and I will be one of the people, among many, 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 many people, telling others what's going on and how to connect and who are they and everything, basically.
So do you feel that in a decade from now, we will all be very different in terms of our understanding, consciousness, technology? Like, do you really feel that, or do you feel that our future is going to be quite different than it is now?
Yes, I do believe so. It's kind of like written in the stars, so to speak. Because as I understand astrology, I'm not really like into astrology, because it's not one of my highest passions, or it's not the way that I explain things. But it does have science, because the way that the stars and the planets are established, it has a geometrical information. It has a geometrical pattern, and that pattern connects to each element of the whole system of the solar system in different ways, in unique ways. So, for example, the planet has a consciousness of itself. They are conscious life forms. So, for example, Venus, in relationship to other planets, will have certain information being received depending on how the planets are established, or how they are organized in a certain time and date. And we, as the planetary conscious of the Earth, would have a different, and it does have an energy. So what has been saying, what something that it has been said for almost decades now, it's that the age of Aquarius will come to humanity. And so it is the idea of the central sun connecting to the Aquarius constellation, because it means the idea of a new era of light, as I said. And it is not that when that happens physically we will change. It's not meant to be observed in a kind of like materialistic way, or in a physical way in which the responsibility is in the stars and its positions. But it is kind of like reflection of our consciousness, because since our physical reality is a reflection of our consciousness, how the astros, how the planets move and they connect to each other, it is a meaning, it is a message, it means something.
But do you feel like any of this information is difficult for people? It seems that some people have a bad reaction to it. It seems very heavy for them. And actually, I've actually experienced some friends that had issues because of it, because they just couldn't handle the paradigm shift. What would you say to people who are having anxiety from this type of information?
Well, it is mostly the idea of becoming aware of what things you fear in life, what things you fear about yourself, what kind of lies or kind of like negative ideas you have about yourself. Because once you observe them and once you grow as a person and change and transform things within you, you project that change in your physical reality. So that change manifests outside too. So I will tell them basically to connect to themselves and transform their inner awareness about who they are and awake to what kind of person do they want to be, what kind of person do they truly are. If you have a negative belief system like I'm not worthy or I'm not capable of doing this, you just have to take that and say, no, this is fear. This is not true about myself. I am limitless, I am powerful, and there is a way out. And who I am is confidence. Who I am is, power. Who I am is love. And what I enjoy about life is art or science or whatever specific topic, because who we are is mostly connected to what brings us passion for living and existing. That is one of the most important things of existence right now. The most empowering things that you can do is to follow what brings you passion.
So that is exactly how I feel naturally. It's like I feel like the shortest route to healing is a positive perspective or a clear understanding of it without becoming overly emotional. And in addition to that, inspiration, happiness. That's the short route to everything. Instead of what I feel the news and the media and all of those things deliberately trying to poison that well, that beautiful well that we could have. It's always suggesting that you should be upset. Oh, this is going to upset you. Get ready. Keep watching. That kind of thing. And I'm against that 100%. I feel like if we're going to show something terrifying, we need to put it in the right perspective, and it should be a transformative situation, even in story. Like I write a lot of darker ideas and science fiction stories and things like that, but by the end of it, there's always this transformation. There should be some kind of exit where you have gone through something and now you become stronger because of it, or you're something different. So what I usually do for the end and with every guest is that I ask this same question. If and when you do leave this consciousness or this earth, what would you take with you into the next stage of existence?
Oh, that will be experience. Experience not in the sense of remembering necessarily all of the details of what I have lived, but the empowerment and the growth and the consciousness that my experiences have made me be able to get, to expand from.
Welcome back to Off to the Witch. I want to thank you for listening to my conversation with Marina. Whether you believe her or not, I think it's at least important to keep an open mind to the possibility that we may have been made partially through the influence of an intelligent force from far away. Many of us already believe that same concept as religion, a higher intelligence from above that created us. The Old Testament even suggesting genetic cloning as Eve was created from Adam's rib. It sounds all too familiar. Perhaps, as many modern ufologists suggest, religion and its many forms are simply archaic perspectives of the very same theory that was put forth in 2001: A Space Odyssey, as well as the stories that Marina Seren told us tonight. Many of us choose to believe that we are a wonderful anomaly in the universe, that we are, in fact, truly alone. One thing is for sure, that if we are truly alone, we certainly won't be for too long. The very real science of probability assures us that somewhere out there are trillions upon trillions of planets that most likely inhabit life. We are now beyond the status of Earthling and are officially exploring as alien astronauts in our modern spacecrafts. We are the aliens, and one day we will meet others. Probability also tells us that eventually everything that was established in the science fiction of the 20th century will come to its fruition. And regardless of all the stories, theories, and tales of alien abduction and visitations, to me, the undeniable fact of our destiny as space explorers is infinitely more fascinating. For those of you who still doubt, I ask you on any clear night to put down all human-made devices of distraction, walk out into the darkness, look up to the stars, and dream.